All right, so let's jump right into it. Thank you everybody for attending episode 48 in Let's Talk Recruiting. Today we're kind of going outside of our normal realm and going into different professions, which I always like to do, typically stepping into the marketing world or sales world. But this is into the coaching world. And our topic for today is 5 things recruiting leaders can learn from sports coaches. I don't think this just goes for recruiting leaders, but all business leaders in general. A few sessions back, I made the comment that I thought corporate leadership was a lot like coaching youth sports. I had a nice, interesting banter with one of the panelists on there. So I see a lot of similarities into it. The topics that we have going on today, I think, are some great topics. When the audience signed up, I asked for a suggestion. Typically, I'm able to kind of formalize some buckets from the suggestions that we get for the topic. It was kind of across the board. And I think with our panelists, you'll see that the key points that they're going to be covering is across the board also. So with us today, we have Christina Derose out of Houston, Mahan Katharatabi. Did I get it?
You got it.
Yes, okay, I'm getting better. Coley Donahue out of Chicago and Eric Winkler out of Charlotte. And we're just going to have a roundtable discussion and go around the table, so to speak, and cover some points. If you're in the audience, feel free to add any comments, questions, or chat in the chat area. So with that said, Christina, let's start off with you and your key item.
Okay, awesome. Well, again, my name is Christina Derose. I am out of Houston, Texas. I am the Director of Talent Acquisition with Bluestone Properties. We own and manage apartment communities all over the U.S. We have about 250 employees and growing. I got into recruiting straight out of college. I started on the agency side, did that for about 3 years, and then moved over to corporate. So when I saw this topic, I was super excited. I played sports my whole life. So I've learned a lot from, coaches throughout my career. So I loved it. So the 2 things I want to talk about today are sometimes most of the time in sports, you fail before you succeed. So I actually played softball. So in that sport, just like baseball, if you're failing 7 out of 10 times, you're actually doing pretty good. So I think that's really important to remember. In recruiting, sometimes you're going to have 5, 10 interviews before you find the right person, maybe even more than that sometimes. So keeping your eyes on the prize and the goal, and just remembering failure is definitely going to happen. And one of the things that one of my best coaches taught me is in a game, if, I just didn't hit well, like whatever it was, I went 0 for 3. They would sit us down and say, like, okay, what went wrong during those at-bats? Were you being too aggressive? Were you pulling your hands? Like really identifying an area for improvement. So once you have that area, you can work hard on correcting it. And just like in recruiting, if you make a bad hire, if someone is just not a good fit, it's going back through the process and figuring out, okay, well, what went wrong? Where could we have identified that red flag earlier before they're actually here? And identifying that and, doing your best to make sure it doesn't happen again. So that's one thing. And then the other thing I wanted to talk about is diversifying your team in every way possible. So I think overall, if you're hiring for a department, you should be a generalist and be able to do everything. But naturally, we're good at certain things and we have interest in certain things. So just like a coach would, they would look at their roster and see, okay, well, we already have some really big home run hitters. We need some, fast leadoff type batters to get on base. So just like a coach would look at their roster, look at strengths and weaknesses, we should be doing the same thing in recruiting. Look at the department and see that, oh, well, we already have this really creative employee who's, does all the flyers and Canva, whatever it is. Maybe you need someone who thinks a little bit different, who's going to challenge one another. So yeah, I think that's all I had today.
Yeah, Christina, do you so here's how I kind of liken positions, right? In the sports where there's different positions. Typically in a recruiting team, this person handles tech and this person handles corporate and this person handles what have you. I always kind of liken those two positions because this person's really good at tech and is really good with the engineer types, while this person is more boisterous and flamboyant and is great with the marketing team.
Mm-hmm.
Around that, do you sort of see that around positioning your players is around
Oh
which
yeah,
roles are recruiting?
absolutely. So me personally, I would like to talk to the sales and the marketing professionals. I've recruited accounting and technical positions, and that's just that's not for me. It doesn't make me a better recruiter than somebody else or somebody else a better recruiter than me. I think we should all be able to fill in and get the job done. But just naturally, like we all just have passions and just a better fit in certain areas.
I think coaching motivation, like I started off an agency like yourself, went to corporate, and I always got fascinated around, well, how do you maintain motivation in the corporate world where there are so many losses before that wins? Agencies, it's easy, right? It's your commission check. So that motivation is pretty crystal clear. But you talked about losses, and this is sort of for the whole panel, what your experience is. The biggest loss in recruiting, or the most hurt feeling I get is when somebody accepts a counter offer. You've gone through the whole process and you think you got it, and they came back, oh, my current company offered me what you're paying plus X. And I'm like, oh my God, that's the most demoralizing feeling I've ever had in recruiting as far as a loss. But how about anybody else? What hits you the worst or the hardest in the gut in recruiting?
I think somebody leaving early, leaving a role quickly. I think you spend a lot of time, I think we all do, building those relationships, and then one day you see the person you hired has left. I think it's sort of a dual feeling for me, because it's a bit of a what did I miss, but then also what didn't I tell that individual that perhaps caused them to leave early, And sometimes it's not even your fault. It's so far out of your control. It could be something to do with the business, but I think I take that on a personal level.
Do you take that as a coaching opportunity with the recruiter that, let's say, it had that happen to?
Yeah, I think it's an opportunity to take a look and see. I think it's an opportunity to sit down with, if it's me, it's go back and look at my notes. If it's a recruiter, go back and get an understanding of sort of their thought process, and also the hiring manager sitting down and understanding, hey, what didn't work? What happened in this situation? Let's take a look so that we don't make that same mistake again, if it's a mistake in the first place.
Well, and if it's just a money issue with accepting a counteroffer, then can you up the money?
No.
I mean, you could, but if it's just money, then that's an easy situation to solve. But I mean, that you should, if you're to that point and it's just money, then that should be solved by a conversation. Either way, it's just that's something that's an easy failure conversation to have. And
well, believe me, I went back asking for more money because I didn't want to lose that. But yeah, I hear what you're saying. Aaron, were you going to add to that?
Yeah, I'd love to jump in just real quick. I mean, all those hurt, right? I think, goes back to you get more losses than you do wins in recruiting, just like sports. But one that gets me these days is a topic around ghosting, and not responding. It may be a scenario where you feel like you're building a relationship, and it's so easy to send a text message or a quick email if someone doesn't want to speak with you, and just some type of response so that you can communicate with your hiring managers, some feedback. I think the worst thing for me right now is when I don't have anything and no one's responding to me and I can't give stuff to my hiring managers. It just makes me feel like, man, just respond. Even if it's bad, just let me know that I know you hear me. I see it says read on the text message. I think that whole concept that gets many of us right now, because it's just a sense of ownership that you want to be able to provide responses and answers to your hiring managers or teams. And that one really gets me these days.
Mm-hmm.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Christina. Vahan, let's sort of jump over to you and your item.
Sure. So real quick, I, just introducing myself, Mahen Catherine Thambi. I, up till May, was the director of recruiting at American Century, a small Midwest-based investment manager with about 175 billion in assets and 1,600 employees. Prior to that, I was at BlackRock on their global executive search team. Before that, I was in the retained side. I worked for Aegon Zender, Spencer Stewart, and Caldwell Partners, not in that order. And I started my career the first about 8 to 10 years or so as an equity trader with Deutsche Bank. So I've had sort of a dual career almost. And so a lot of the stuff I got on the coaching front, I coach myself. I coach my son's hockey team. I've been doing that for years. I played in college, and beyond that, I just asked a couple of friends of mine who are professional coaches at the college ranks to understand sort of how they look at recruiting, how they look at building their teams. And I kind of came away with four things, and I'll just run through it real quick. Number one, just have a defined plan around how you're going to build your team. Um, the Tuesday session that you ran, Sean, one of the panelists talked about building a foundation, and that's sort of where this comes from, having that foundational block, and then how the other individuals play around it. Do you have, overlaps in skills and strengths, or are there gaps that you need to fill? Have you created a team that's got complementary parts? Won't people, how do you handle, quote unquote, the injuries when someone leaves, when someone can't cover something? How do you fill in those blanks? The second thing is establish clear and concise objectives and goals, for the season, for the year. Make sure they're realistic and attainable, for that matter. Make sure everybody understands what they are and what role they play in it. Three, just don't be afraid to make a change quickly if necessary. Certainly, there's a fine line between being patient with individual members and needing to make a change for the sake of staying focused. And then finally, just being supportive. I think you want to celebrate your successes. You want to recognize the hard work of everyone, and certainly don't dwell on the failures, certainly just long enough that you can analyze and learn from them.
Let me ask you a question around objectives and goals piece of it, right? Having those clearly defined and well-known. There's nothing worse than having vague direction where nobody really knows, what are we trying to do, or what's expected of me? Kind of sticking with the coaching theme, the scoreboard, right? When you're playing a game, it's a running clock, it's a running scoreboard. Everybody's always looking up at it. You mentioned like reporting, right? Like quarterly or annually, those, well, not reporting, but the goals, right? Do you do any type of, and I'm a big fan of this, of weekly reporting, right? It pulls out your ATS, you get it to a minimal, but the concept of a weekly score, so it's ongoing, consistent, so nobody's being...
It's funny. I'm not a huge fan, or I haven't been a huge fan of sort of those weekly types of measurements. I think when you put metrics like that, I worry that people might play to that and just, if it's, you need to make 100 calls in a week, people might make 100 calls. Now, are they 100 quality calls? Maybe not, right? I think there's more value in making 20 to 30 really good calls, really good sourcing calls, or generating candidates off of that than just spraying 100 calls out there, right? I think there is an importance in metrics. I think it holds you accountable to something, and it helps you, kind of get to your goals. I've been a bit more of a fan of seeing how, I guess the results probably, or I guess probably the best way to put it, right, is what's the end result? Did we find the right candidate? Were we able to close it quickly enough? Are we faster than the average, than say our search providers that we go and hire, right? Because in a corporate role, that's ultimately what, in my mind, one of the goals is you want to be able to do an effective job and to be able to sell yourself as doing it faster than, say, going to a retained firm.
So in my own defense, I wouldn't say track number of calls. I know a lot of agencies do that. I'm not saying that, but so
that's
for me,
the agency part of me speaking.
Yeah, you'd lose everybody. They'd be gone in a week.
Yeah.
But what I've seen work really well is having, like, still with the sports analogy, a season starts on January 1, ends on December 31st. And you, on a weekly scoring, you track total hires for the year. So each recruiters can kind of see where they stand with their teammates. And then my big milestones are ongoing hires, on-site interviews for the week. And I like to track percent unreviewed rates in your applicant pool. So it's like, are you overwhelmed because there's 90% of the resumes you've never looked at? So just to have that as a general. But the underlying number one theme that I got brought in recruiting, I still think is the number one metric, is on-site interviews per week, because it's like an attainable number every single week, and I can start over the next week. So yeah, those milestone numbers is what I refer to.
Those are the ones I haven't used. I think the on-site interview one is certainly one I hadn't heard of before. I think those are great.
Yeah. So let me ask you a question around the team manager piece of it. Again, I don't want to sit here and compare agency to corporate all day long. One of the differences that I saw in agency versus corporate was in the agency, you basically had team meetings, right, around the whiteboard. And you had it every morning at the beginning of the day. I only worked in like 3 agencies before I went to corporate, but it's all basically the same type of setup like that. And then in the corporate world, I typically would find it's mostly one-on-one meetings where the team lead has a one-on-one with the recruiter, and you don't see a lot of team meetings, like where they're all together talking racks. Am I just missing that, or have you guys seen that?
I've done the weekly team meeting. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut anybody
We
off.
did that. I did that with my
we
team
did that too.
all the time.
Okay, well, good.
Yeah. Did you say talking rats?
Racks, talking Rex.
Rex.
Yeah, no.
Oh, Rex. I'm like, what? I'm like, that's a phrase I haven't heard.
No, but the guy that took the counter offer is a rat, I tell you. I'm just joking. No, I just think that just sort of that camaraderie in recruiting, because it's
so
a team
important.
game to me. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's
And I
good.
think you can also have, sort of, while you're not going to, you're not going to whiteboard every single search as you would in the agency side. In your corporate team meetings, it just could be as simple as, hey, who needs some help thinking through a challenging search, right? And I think that's where you can get the whole group involved and get a number of ideas.
Yeah,
I
maybe
think it also,
go ahead, Eric. I'm sorry.
sorry, Sean. I was going to say it also just depends on your dynamic of your team and, where you all sit. I know some folks have remote teams or teams across the country. Me personally, I sit in an office and I've got 8 team members that are right around me, and we're very interactive all day, every day. So some sense, we do one-on-ones every week, but I don't do a team meeting every week because we're very involved and together all day. Again, right now is a little bit more unique with, the COVID scenario and that, but I think the structure of how your team is set up really plays into the need to have team meetings versus individual one-on-ones and how that works.
But maybe the last company I was at did do it, so hopefully maybe I got that old mindset in my head that I just don't remember seeing it.
I'm with you.
Is anything else to add to Mahan's topics? Or were you still
Just
going?
real-
Go ahead.
Just real quick, I love the part about not dwelling on failure and analyzing and learning from mistakes. And I think, I'm a baseball coach, still play Division III baseball, and I tell my 11-year-olds every day before we start practicing a game, we're going to make mistakes today. It's going to happen. You got to expect it. It's what we do after that. How the team rallies around it, and how we kind of keep it that way and build off of it and learn from it and our emotions. And it's very similar. I mean, recruiting, we all know you're going to get more no's than yeses. You're going to chase a good candidate, and you're going to have failure, and you're going to disappoint a hiring manager. But all hiring managers, want to know how you react and what you do from that point forward, and make them feel confident that, you're there with them and you're going to fix it. You're going to find a way, find a solution. So I just think that's a key aspect in understanding we're going to have some type of failure, in this position, and don't dwell on it, learn from it. Support it as a leader, and what are we going to do to help our teammates, grow from that, and hopefully not have that specific situation happen again. But it's a big part of what we do. So building off of failure in a good way to me is very key aspect in recruiting and team building.
Excellent.
Yeah, definitely.
Coley, should we jump over to you and do your topic?
Yeah, sure. I have just ended a position earlier this year with the mid-market company, and I led talent acquisition for them. Mainly, I was hiring high-level salespeople and a lot of executive marketing individuals. My specialty is really honing in on high performance individuals and hiring for attitude and motivation. And so I was able to bridge the gap on retention and bring down the turnover in the organization. So that's really kind of dialing in on the metrics within interviewing and the internal metrics on interviewing and all of that. So I'm kind of a data person in that sense. I grew up around coaches all around me. I grew up in a college town, and all of my neighbors were all the coaches. My kids are really heavily invested in sports, and my husband coaches. So, and I'm in the process of hiring coaches right now for my son's football program. So I'm really ensconced in coaching right now. So this was interesting for me. To piggyback on what Christina said, who obviously has been around a lot of good coaches, the failure in being self-aware enough as a leader to recognize that you are not getting a bunch of carbon copies and you're getting a lot of different individuals on your team, which a lot of people don't realize as hiring managers. It's so important, but you need to nurture people individually and make sure you're getting a lot of different individuals and meeting employees where they are individually and coaching them up from where they are personally. I think great sports coaches do that well. And making sure you individualize the expectations and goals and objectives. Just like Mahan said, for one of my employees, for her goals and objectives, I had to make them daily for her, in addition to what they were on a monthly and yearly basis, because that's what she needed for some of her searches. She needed a daily goal for her progress. That's okay. That's what she needed for her personal success. And I think sports coaches, you need to keep everyone focused. You're going to get a lot of people coming at you and with all of their feedback about why you may not be good at what you do or what you've done wrong, but you've got to keep everyone motivated and goal-oriented and tell them why they're awesome and why they're going to do great on their next search and why they're not going to listen to the naysayers. And that's what good sports coaches do in my mind.
Question for you around kind of that tailored coaching, right? You coach the player.
Yeah.
When we look at, for like better words, a junior level recruiter for senior or somebody who's like really far experienced, are we kind of pulling back a little bit on the coaching on the experienced recruiters or going a little bit more on the low one?
No way. I don't think so.
Anybody else? I'm way off on ideas
I think
today.
just challenging them in a different way. If they're at a higher level in one area, giving them a higher level tasks to get them to the next. I mean, there's always room to grow.
Yeah.
Right? Like this is a growing experience for me. These are some of the, only time I've ever been a panelist. I was like, this is kind of, it's going to help me grow. So same with a recruiter, just figure out what that next step for them is and push them towards it.
Mm-hmm.
Do we see a difference between the phrase coaching and supporting? Is that one and the same? I'll give you an example. You'll have a recruiter who is getting bothered that they feel that their big brother's overwatching them, or I'm being watched every single thing I do. I'm making hires, I'm doing my job, I'm just getting big brother to death. I've heard some conversations like that. Is that somebody who is out there succeeding and it's not necessarily a coaching situation, but it's more of there's a quote, if you can't control them, support them type situation?
Well, one seems to lack trust in my mind from what you've said.
Okay. Anybody else on that? Or just to add to what Coley was saying? Maybe I'm way up on this one, the difference between supporting and coaching. So I'll give you another example, an executive recruiter who kind of goes off and does their thing, typically working off-site, right? Which is I've seen quite often. So they're out there doing their thing and they're making their hires. It's not as much hires as a high volume recruiter or a medium volume. So to your point, Coley, yeah, there has to be trust there, off-site, not as many wins to get just because it's the nature of the beast for that.
Yeah.
So that in my mind would be more of I have less to coach them on, but I'm here to support them. So I'm in more of a support role as a leader versus a coaching role.
I mean, it sounds like with an experienced recruiter like that, you would be picking and choosing your spots as opposed to maybe, and that's maybe they need more support or more of a supporting relationship where you're enabling them to kind of get, whatever roles they need to get completely done.
Yeah.
I think of sort of the coaching aspect as teaching someone or teaching, a team member how to do specific things or how to handle specific situations, challenging hiring manager or, a candidate who's extensively negotiating. So yeah, I explain that out. That's sort of how I the difference between it.
Gotcha. All right. Yeah, just different perspective. I think that I've been looking at from a lot of time in my experience has been offsite support. So I have a lot of side conversations with recruiters. I love going when I support a team to have conversations when the boss isn't in the room. So it's like you get a different sort of style, and you got to work in support go back with the boss and work in a supportive role to get those goals achieved. Okay, I will let that one die on the vine there. All right, Coley, were you good? Were you good on your end?
Yeah.
All right, Eric, let's jump over to you and your item.
Yeah. Well, thanks again for having the opportunity. I always love jumping on here. This topic, as we all stated, was something that jumped out at me. As I mentioned, very active in coaching youth sports and, played baseball at a Division III level, and sports have been kind of part of my life since I was, young. And it actually helps me in my eyes every day as not just a recruiter, but as a, recruiting leader. I mentioned I have 8 folks that are on my team, and each individual has different skill sets and ways they need to be managed, and desires and interests and what they want to do in their career. So having that experience of coaching as well as recruiting is a cool combination. So I appreciate this subject very much. I'm Eric Winkler. I'm the director of recruiting. Work for a company called HealthStat. Been here about 4 years now. We operate on-site health centers in about 30 different states. We have a little over 200 clinics. So a lot of my team works on, of course, corporate hires, but mostly physicians, nurse practitioners, physician assistants, phlebotomists, medical assistants. So very unique skill sets, state requirements, things like that. And every state has different requirements on what they can do in healthcare. So there's always challenges on our recruitment. A couple of things I wanted to touch on today, some great topics have already been touched, but I'm big on fundamentals. So, as a coach, I always believe no matter how much experience you have, how old you are, how talented you may be, going back and working on fundamentals, whether it's basketball and shooting free throws at the end of practice or, baseball, softball, right? Extra, reps in the cage and the tee is key. Going back to the basics and understanding how you got there and what has helped you, be successful. So no matter how much experience you have, going back to basics, always working on your craft, whether it's a specific training, whether it's shadowing somebody, going to a conference, learning, taking some educational classes, whatever it might be, just always trying to get back to those fundamentals to keep working on that to make you stronger. And of course, sharing those fundamentals with your teammates, whether junior folks coming in or even people that are more senior than you. I think we can always learn from each other. So I'm just big on the fundamental aspect, and that's from sports as well as in recruitment. Another one that I certainly would definitely want to touch on, and I may be a little unique in this. My team looks at me sometimes and thinks I'm crazy, but I'm always trying to find ways to help them advance. And even in some of our one-on-ones, I have 1 or 2 that I know may not be with me, in another 3 or 4 years, because I may not be able to give them what they need here. But I take great pride in helping them hone their craft and their skills and help them get to where they want to get to. Folks have done that for me in my career. And I think as a leader, whether it's as a coach or a recruitment leader or any leader, helping your teammates get better, helping them advance, to take on new challenges that they want to, even if it means losing a player on your team or, in your organization. A good leader coach is always pushing their teammates to be better and grow. And that's something that I think some people lose sight on because day to day you're trying to accomplish things. I want to accomplish things, but I want to see myself as well as my team do well and have opportunities to take on more and be better. So those are some things. Again, there's a whole lot of them, but those are 2 that just really kind of came off the top of my head that around this subject that I wanted to share and certainly talk about.
So Eric, from that perspective, if one of your the recruiters on your teams gets a job at another company and it's a promotion, right? Better
Yep.
title, better pay. It's kind of a win for you in that sense, even though you're losing the person.
Personally, if they've been with me, for a period of time, again, 6 months may not be that, but if we've taken some time together, and they've been on the team and they're ready for that, and I can't give them that here, or there's not an opportunity for them to do that here, I would shake their hand, high five them, give them a hug, depending on who it was, and be excited for them, and see what we can do from there. And maybe that opened up the doors for someone else. But, I don't ever want to lose a good person. But if a great person has an opportunity to go advance their skill set that I can't provide for them, and I was part of that, to me personally, I sleep well at night.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Is that sort of a no-brainer that, hey, when good people get promotion, it's a good thing for everybody? The other panelists?
Yeah. That's like the Xerox way.
Absolutely. I mean, that would show as a leader, you did your job cross-training and mentoring and getting them to that next step.
Yeah.
So go ahead, Eric, I'm sorry.
And I may have one or two of my teammates watching this, and that's fine. And they know me, and I probably shared that with them in our one-on-ones. And hopefully my boss isn't watching, but that's all good. I mean, when it comes down to it, I'm very prideful. And if I can help someone do something good, whether it's on my team or whether it's one of my 11-year-olds on my baseball team, I mean, to me, that's just the good. I'm not always going to get more money in my paycheck, right? We all wish we could, but if you can do some other things that are really good and make you feel like you brought something to somebody else to help them, it's a big thing of recruiting that I truly enjoy. And it started back in the day, right? I think a lot of us will say one of the very favorite things we like about recruiting is help somebody with their career, right? So we're recruiting somebody into our organization that gives them more opportunity, more money, security for their family, whatever it might be. That's a core of recruiting. And I think we should still be doing that as recruiting leaders as well.
So is it a good sign of a good recruiter, good coach to actively get their people up that career ladder? Again, hopefully within your own company, but to have that kind of on your to-do list to get your people promoted? Is that something
if they want it, right? I think that's really understanding, like in your one-on-ones and on your yearly reviews, understanding your team and what they want out of their career. I have one or two.
It looks different for everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. I have one or two that love what they're doing. They're great. They don't have any aspirations to be a leader, and that's totally fine. How can we help them continue to do what they do? And then I have one or two that, would love to be a manager and a director in their career, and you've got to help them in different ways. Again, everyone might have some different opinions, but that's what I would share on that.
Are these sort of like verbal conversations that we have with our people that work for us, or are we putting this in a career plan or kind of formalize it in any way, or is this just, hey, we're going to work together and try and get you what you want?
So I'll state for me, I started the conversation. These are verbal conversations I have with my team, in our one-on-ones periodically, asking them what they need from me, how are things going, and then certainly in our yearly review process, what are the goals for next year, and what do we need to do to help you get there, and what can I, as your leader, help you do to get there? I'm not just going to send you to a course and say good luck, right? It's not always the best thing. It could be a mixture of some stuff. So there's two ways to do that, at least for me and where I'm at, is verbal as well as in a review process on a yearly basis for our goals throughout the next year.
How about for the other panelists? Are these just sort of anecdotal stories and
conversations? And if I went to a conference, then I did a presentation and then I taught it to our talent acquisition team and HR team about what we had. But the fundamentals, I've not done that with having the senior level individuals come back and do fundamental training. I would just take issues that we were having and then review those items in our weekly trainings. So I'm curious about how you guys go back and do fundamental training, what that really looks like with like your senior level people, if you have them training your entry level individuals, or what that looks like, your foundational like going back to basics with people.
Something I took from Eric's comment on fundamentals was, I know Shawnee brought it up earlier, having a candidate accept a counteroffer. So I was taught as an entry-level recruiter, people leave jobs for two reasons: money and motivation. Like, those are the two things that you need to talk about throughout the entire process. So if I'm getting to the end and there's a counteroffer and they're accepting it, it's like, whoa, what happened? Like, I didn't do that enough. Like, I didn't bring up that, the reason why they don't like their job right now is they're commuting an hour. Like, I didn't continuously poke at that enough or get down to money enough. So to me, if that happened right now with, 6 years of experience, I would be like, okay, I need to go back to that. I need to bring it up more. And that would be like a fundamental for me to go back to.
Okay. Okay.
I think
Go
that,
go
I
ahead.
think you can go. Sorry, I think you can jump in that when you talk about team meetings and you're trying to have. It's not always about recs, right? So maybe you position quarterly. You're doing some type of training, or you're even asking one of your recruiters to come in and be the presenter in the meeting. Let's talk about this topic. Let's talk about this topic, and you rotate on your team.
Oh, so train okay.
Yeah,
Train the trainer.
Yeah, I mean, it's for me at HealthStat, right? We've got a lot of clinical recruiters, and I have kind of general corporate recruiter as well. And having opportunities for that corporate recruiter to learn clinical and vice versa, train the trainer from a fundamental standpoint, is to me is a great concept to use periodically in your meetings.
Okay, that's how I expected, but I was just curious. Okay.
Oh, no, sorry. I was going to say, it also just allows you to kind of trade best practices too when you have, and I did a little bit of what you did, Eric, was having different people rotate and lead team meetings and pick topics that they wanted to talk about, or that they felt were things they wanted to discuss or could get help with. And I think that you get a lot of energy around that, and also it helps the individuals, especially the younger ones, prepare for speaking and speaking publicly, speaking with others, preparing for meetings, things like that.
Mm-hmm. How do you guys motivate your teams? What's your go-to?
I don't micromanage, right? So, I mean, these folks on my team, it's accountability. We have one-on-ones every week, and we're looking for, continued growth each week. And I think it's just giving them the autonomy to go out there and do their thing, especially right now. It's being challenged even more in the environment that we're in. Obviously with COVID and how that's kind of separated some of us, and we're working, different shifts. It's autonomy. They don't micromanage them, have trust in them, show them some support. Good recruiters will like that. And then it also goes back to supporting them and them knowing that you have their back. I have not had an issue, with my current team on motivation. And I think some of it is nobody, a lot of us came from the agency world. And one of the reasons we want to get out of the agency world, right, is that whole micromanagement concept. So if you've got a really good recruiter that's been successful and just has a different lifestyle now than they did in agency, they don't want to be micromanaged. They want to be hired for a concept and a job to do, and give them the keys to do it. And you're the guardrails to help them. And if that doesn't motivate them, then you probably hired the wrong person. That's my feedback.
Have you seen any impact around team management with everything being on video these last few months? Or is it just, you just adjusted and kept on going?
I mean, I haven't seen much there. I mean, again, we don't interact as much, right? Because we're not here front and center all the time. We rotate two different groups, but I'm, very blessed and pleased with, the way that this team has continued to charge forward. We have a job to do. If we don't have nurse practitioners and physicians hired, we can't see patients. And right now in today's environment, that's very critical. And, we're fortunate that, the folks on our recruitment team believe in what we're doing here. And I think that's also motivational as well. If they're recruiting people that help the organization be successful and get to the mission, that's another concept we haven't talked about. But I think, depending on what you're recruiting for is motivation as well sometimes. So
passion can go a long way, or passion and purpose. Purpose leads to passion.
Purpose, yeah.
Only one thing you mentioned earlier is you were recruiting for attitude and effort. that is huge. I would much rather hire a candidate who has that over years of experience.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Pays dividends. Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So we're a little bit over. I'd sort of like to do a little final recap if you have any final thoughts around the whole coaching metaphor and how it applies to recruiting. So let me just sort of go around the circle. Coley, I got you on the top of my screen. So any final thoughts or comments?
No, I loved like the expectations and focusing on, I think the clear expectations and nurturing people is so key. And everyone else seems to have the comments all about that too. They really had a lot to say.
Christina?
Nothing really to add. I think everyone had some really good points here. This was good.
Mahan?
I don't have anything to add. I think I think there are a lot of great points, just echoing what Christina said. I thought the one thing that I really liked was just the discussion around coaching your team, your individuals up and being self-aware. I think that's one of those things. I know I sometimes lose sight of that when you get kind of mired in what you're doing on a daily basis.
Yeah, and Eric, before I get to you, one quick comment on that. So we talk about recruiting for diversity and what have you, and you'll talk to a lot of recruiters are like, I'm happy to recruit diversity when I can find it, but I don't always find it in these certain areas that I'm stuck to once you get into hard to fill positions or senior leadership. So I think that coaching up internally and increasing that talent pool, I think that most companies are ready and waiting to recruit that diverse talent. It's when it's there. So helping everybody get coached up and get to that part of that level is, I think, going to be crucial in the end of all of this. Eric, final thought?
And just one final thing. I think, the whole concept of, coaching and recruitment, I'd say just, remain humble and remember where you came from. I think about how some of the favorite athletes that I have, I love what they do to go back to their communities and help out and give back to the places that help them get there. And I'd say the same thing in daily life in our careers. Several people helped me get where I'm at, and certainly, given that opportunity as a leader to help other people and help hiring managers, whatever it might be, just be humble and give back and, remember where you came from, that at one point you were there looking for someone to help support you. And, I think those are just concepts that I would always ask for people to think about. Remember, we were there one day, and we got here. And if more of us do that, I think it continue to be a great career, and we provide great opportunity and investment and revenue back to corporations, that invest in us inside the organization. That's key. That's just kind of some things I'd share there.
Excellent. Well, thank you, everybody. I thought that was another great conversation on kind of an off-topic topic. So I appreciate it. With that said, and enjoy the rest of your day and enjoy your upcoming weekend. I'll talk to everybody soon. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone.
See you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.